This is based on a true story. Have you ever tried to find out if there's a ghost or spirit in a place? If you have, I'm sure you must have tried the candle in front of the mirror technique or the good old Ouija board. And most of the time these rituals don't work or are nothing more than a joke amongst friends who try them. However, back when I was in college, I shared a room with two other roommates, Rohan and Xander. Rohan was a student from India, and Xander was a British guy. I'm from a small town in North Carolina. We bonded over our love for movies and TV shows, especially for anything horror. Rohan and I loved horror stuff, but not as much as Xander did. He was so invested in it. He used to watch haunted videos on YouTube, and he had read almost every Stephen King novel. In our first year, we tried the Ouija board, and nothing happened. But in our second year, Xander suggested we do a new haunted ritual to see if there's any spirit in our dorm room or in our dorm altogether. Considering nothing had happened when we played with the Ouija board, we decided to go for it and do the ritual with Xander. He had found the ritual on some forbidden website on the internet. The ritual required 4 people, so we decided to ask Ali, a girl who lived in the room opposite to us, to join us. Once the spirit or ghost is spotted, the people stop moving and then they can ask questions to the spirit. Xander finally ended his explanation. "This ritual's quite simple, it seems," I said. "Yes, it is, and has a great success rate. The people who did it posted their experiences on the website, and I must warn you, they were pretty terrifying. Also, once we are done, we need to say goodbye to the spirit and cross our hearts with our fingers. This signals that we have severed the connection with the spirit." "Okay, let's do it. I just hope this one isn't a flop show like the Ouija board," Rohan mocked. He was the one amongst us who believed in ghosts and spirits the least, although he saw all the movies for pure entertainment and thrill. The moment we entered the dorm room, we realized that it was too dusty. No one had lived in this room for years. It was dark and had an odd vibe to it, unlike other dorm rooms. "So, I think you 3 can take up each corner and face the wall. I will stand in the middle and give you guys the cue to change corners," Xander said. We all agreed, and Ali took the corner nearest to the door. The other corner next to the door was taken by Rohan, and I chose the one to the right of Rohan. This means Ali was standing to the left of the door, Rohan to its right, and me beside Rohan. The corner between me and Ali was empty. Xander closed the door and locked it, covering the room in darkness. It was so quiet in here that we could hear each other's breath. Xander took the center spot and said, "Okay, guys. Now, please stop looking at each other and focus on just the wall in front of you. When I say go, you move from your corner to the corner to your right. Got it?" "Yep," all 3 of us said in unison. "Okay. Go." Luckily, she agreed, and so we decided to perform the ritual on a weekend. Usually, the majority of the students in the dorm would be either at a party or studying on a Saturday night, so it was perfect to do the ritual then. Although we had agreed to do the ritual, Ali, Rohan, and I had no idea what we were supposed to do in this ritual. Xander had kept that information to himself, and when Ali asked him what the process was, he said he would tell us on the day of the ritual. To be honest, I thought it wouldn't be anything more than a joke. I mean, does this ritual ever work? And why would there be a spirit in a dorm room, right? So the 4 of us got together in our dorm room on a Saturday night that week. We'd expected Xander to bring some kind of ingredients like sage, salt, perhaps animal blood, or least of all, candles. But he had nothing with him. "Are we doing this haunted ritual or not?" Rohan asked. "Yeah, we are." "So, where are all the ingredients?" Ali asked. "For this one, we won't need any extra stuff. A dark room and 4 people are enough." "Okay, but are you going to tell us what the ritual is?" "Yeah, I will. You all take a seat." We all sat down on the beds in our dorm room. "So, to do this ritual, we need to go to the spare dorm room at the end of the hall. It's almost always empty. All we have to do is 3 of us have to stand in each corner of the room facing the wall and leave one corner empty. One of us will stand in the center of the room. The people in the corner have to move from one corner to the adjacent, clockwise, on the call of the person standing in the middle. The room has to be pitch black for the ritual, and as we continue to do this, if there's a spirit in the room, that spirit will occupy the empty corner. The person standing in the center will be the only one seeing the spirit as the others are looking at their respective corner. The moment he said that, I started moving, and facing the wall itself, I managed to get to the other corner. I could hear that Ali and Rohan too had moved. Now Ali was standing in my position and Rohan in hers. "Go again," Xander said. With that cue, we changed the corners again. This continued for a good 15 minutes. Even though I couldn't see anyone, I knew Ali and Rohan were as agitated as I was. This was sillier than a damn Ouija board. We already knew no spirit was there and the fourth corner would always remain empty. But before Xander could ask us to move for what felt like the 100th time, he asked us to stop. "Don't move, guys," Xander said. I see someone between Ollie and Tyson." "You better be serious, Xander," Rohan warned. We expected Xander to give a snarky remark, but all we got was silence. And that's when I dared to look at the corner to my right and saw the most terrifying sight of my life. A girl was wearing a pale yellow nightgown, standing there. She had long hair covering her face, and just like us, she was facing the wall too. But she was slightly moving back and forth on her heels. Xander's sight was fixed on her too, and slowly, Ollie and Rohan saw her as well. But we didn't leave our positions, as Xander had suggested to us. But soon the girl stopped rocking on her heels and started turning around to face us. The moment she showed her face, the blood in my body froze. Her eyes were big, hollow pits, and most of her face was still covered by her hair. But when we saw her face, half of her mouth was missing, and we could see the rotten teeth and muscles there. We freaked out, and before we could understand, we were all running out the door towards our dorm room. We locked ourselves in and just caught our breath for a while. After that, no one said a word about what we had seen. Ollie stayed with us that night as she was too scared to go back to her room. The next day, we spoke to one another over breakfast. We all agreed that we saw an entity in that room, and the damn ritual worked. But we were glad that we could get out of there before the girl could hurt us. A few days passed and Xander was alone in the dorm room when he saw the girl standing in a corner of the room, staring at him. That's when he realized that we didn't end the ritual properly, because none of us had crossed our hearts at the end of the ritual, as he said. When he posted his experience, an old gentleman who had posted about this ritual told him that to make the entity go away, we had to perform the ritual again in the same place, at the same time, with the same people involved, and end it this time. But we were too afraid to do the ritual again, and for years now, all four of us see the girl sometimes, standing in odd corners. She had never heard any of us, but that doesn't mean it doesn't terrify us. So, if you're planning to do any haunted ritual, make sure to end it properly, or the entities may follow you around for the rest of your life.
Hey, my name is Alex, and I was an urban explorer of the paranormal. You know, those people who go on YouTube with a group of friends getting into the most dangerous places where unexplained things happen. Everyone asks me if I ever saw anything paranormal, or if all my videos were fake. My answer disappoints many. We made all the paranormal activities. What I don't tell them is that one of them was true, and it was the scariest night of my life. I'll put you in context. I won't tell you where because I don't want you to try to do it. But let's just say that if you look for haunted trains in the United States, you might find it. Although during the day it operates normally, it is said that at night, This public transportation has a dark story to tell. Several years ago, the 27-minute train had a brake failure, so it crashed at the last station, killing almost all of the passengers in the front cars of the train. Several years after the tragedy, many people said that if you go to the last station before the terminal at that time, you will see the ghosts of the people who died that day. When I went to do this urban exploration, no one could join me. I had no problem going alone. It was just a train. I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary to happen. I got on the train at the appointed time. The same day of the year, tragedy struck. As the legend said, I went to the front seats. I was lucky that those cars were empty, although I wasn't surprised either, since there weren't too many people traveling at that time of the night. I sat down and waited for the time to pass. I could see that nothing was going to happen, and honestly, I wasn't surprised. I had been at this for a long time. Nothing ever really happened. I sat back and relaxed, enjoying the ride and figuring out how to make up scares to upload to YouTube, when all of a sudden, something happened. This whole part is a bit confusing, as it happened too fast, and I was a bit distracted. But I remember that when we entered the tunnel, the train was filled with darkness. The darkness was only interrupted by flashing lights coming from some lanterns. In those flashes of light, I saw much more than I wanted to have seen. The carriage, empty, was full of people. People in clothes that looked like they were from another era, reading newspapers or with their families. I saw some articles from the date of the incident, and these people were the same. Terrified, I jumped from my seat. Everything was empty again. I stood there confused, wondering if this was real. Suddenly, the lights in the car broke, and at that moment, I confirmed my doubts. In the middle of the darkness, I could see how all the people were not only back, but they were looking at me. Who are you? Who are you guys? This is impossible. Ah! What's wrong? Why are they screaming? You have to help us. Please, don't let it happen again. It's the first time someone's come. Please, don't let it happen. Ah! While all the passengers were screaming in panic, I could see how their faces were melting rapidly, and I could see some of their limbs falling off. As their faces melted, they all walked towards me faster and faster, reaching out to grab me. While I slumped in my seat, screaming in fear and praying for this sudden nightmare to end. As it all happened, I felt the train going faster and faster, derailing out of control. The screams of desperation from the people became more and more noticeable. These people were not trying to attack me. They were asking for help. It was as if they knew something bad was going to happen to them, but they couldn't do anything to stop it. The train was going faster than before. It was about to crash. I closed my eyes, and crying, I peed myself. At that moment, the noises stopped, and I heard the automatic voice of the train saying that we arrived at the terminus. I opened my eyes. The car was empty. When I checked my camera footage, it didn't pick up any ghosts or anything unusual apart from the temporary power outage. Despite that, my reaction looked very genuine, and I'm sure many people would believe me. I was about to upload the video, but while editing it, I decided not to. I always upload my videos to entertain people, but by doing this, I was creating a monster. Many people would surely not believe me, but others would, and they would go looking for ghosts on that train. This would cause many of them not to come back, and I'll be honest, I don't want to have that blood on my hands. From that day on, I kept doing urban explorations, but I never did them alone again. If I see something again, I prefer to be with my friends, so I'm sure I'm not crazy. Needless to say, I never traveled by train again. I tried to get on a completely different train, but even though I knew it was a figment of my imagination, I still felt the screams of all the people calling for help. All those people who were doomed to relive their death for eternity. Some were still asking me for help. Others were angry that I did nothing to help them. Whether or not it was something I imagined, that time, I decided to get off the train and take a bus. I'll be honest, I never believed in the paranormal. I always believed that paranormal videos were made by people pulling strings behind the camera, Photoshop, or video editing. I always said I would believe in the paranormal if I saw something that convinced me. I never thought I would regret anything so much in my life. It all started when my daughter moved into my apartment. I had recently moved out as I had separated from my wife and she had taken the house. She was on vacation, so I was going to take care of Amy for 2 weeks. Amy and I had always been very close, and we were both looking forward to spending this time together. It was going to be a great 2 weeks with just the two of us together. I never imagined there would be 3 of us. The first 2 days, nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But on the 3rd day, Amy was behaving strangely. She was playing and talking to someone in her room. When I went over to ask her who she was talking to, she told me she was playing with Vincent. I never imagined her as the type of girl who would have an imaginary friend, but it's not something that bothered me. I let her keep playing. What's the worst that could happen? As the days went by, Amy became more and more distant from me. She didn't treat me badly or seem angry, but she was very distracted by her imaginary friend. She spent all day talking to Vincent, so much that I was starting to worry, and that worry would grow even more when it was time to eat. Amy asked me to put 3 plates on the table instead of 2, and I hesitantly agreed. She also asked me to cook something else, since Vincent didn't like macaroni and cheese, and that's when I decided to draw the line. I told Amy that Vincent had to eat what I had known. But just so I wouldn't be too cruel to her, I served her imaginary friend a plate of food. I went to get the drink from the fridge, but suddenly, a plate full of macaroni flew next to me, smashing into the wall next to the fridge. When I turned around, furious, I saw that Vincent's plate was gone. I got very angry with Amy, but she told me that she had nothing to do with what happened, that it was Vincent. Angry, she challenged her imaginary friend, which made me even angrier. Despite my anger, I decided not to say anything to her. I would have a talk with her, but since she had been with me so long ago, I preferred to be more permissive. The next day was Friday, and I had promised Amy that I would take her to the video games during the night. I went shopping for just a few minutes. She was taking a nap and could definitely take care of herself for a few minutes. When I came back, I couldn't believe what I saw. The kitchen was destroyed. All the dishes were destroyed. The chairs on the floor and the cutlery scattered everywhere. Furious, I yelled for the first time to Amy. She again told me it wasn't her fault. It was her imaginary friend. I was furious and sent her to bed without going to the games. She, between furious and sad, locked herself in her room to cry. Minutes later, I felt really bad about what I had done. I had never yelled at Amy like that, and I didn't want to start right now. I was thinking about going to her room and forgiving her. I was sure she had learned her lesson. Before going to her, I checked the security cameras in the kitchen. It's not that if I doubted the imaginary friend was true, I just wanted to show the footage to Amy so she would understand not to lie to me. What I didn't know was that she really wasn't lying to me. As I watched the footage, I didn't see Amy. The kitchen was destroying itself. It was as if something invisible was taking out my entire kitchen, destroying it bit by bit with indescribable force. I ran to the kitchen. I needed to see everything again. As I did, I realized that this could not have been Amy's doing. The chairs were broken, and some of the dishes from very high places were on the floor. There's no way Amy could have gotten there, not even by climbing on a chair. As I was going through everything, I found a strange photo on the floor, and I bent down to pick it up. In that photo was a terrifying 6-foot-tall man. Next to him, there was a frightened-looking woman, and in the middle, a little boy. A frightened little boy. Behind the photo, someone had written something by hand. Family photo, Alfonso, Maria, and Vincent. Could it be that child was Vincent? I went to Amy's room and showed her the photo without telling her my suspicions. But she just spoke.
Oh, you found Vincent's picture.
It was true. That boy was Vincent. This couldn't be true. There had to be a logical explanation. But that video, I had no way of denying that this was happening. Trying to understand a little more, I tried to get some information out of Amy. But I never would have expected her to tell me what she told me. Sweetie, what does your little friend want? What did he tell you?
No, but he just told me something.
Is he here with you right now?
Yes.
Hey, what's the matter? What did he say?
He said you ask a lot of questions. He said he wants to hurt you. He's saying a lot of bad words to you. He's very angry.
Tell your friend to calm down. I won't hurt him.
You should stop calling him little. I don't think he likes it. He's very, very tall.
Confused, I showed her the picture again and pointed to the child. Didn't you just say that this is Vincent? Startled, she grabbed my finger and wagged it up, pointing to the terrifying 6-foot man behind him.
No, this is Vincent.
My blood froze. Almost at the same time, I began to feel something behind me. It was air. It was a breath. Someone was breathing on the back of my neck.
Daddy, I'm scared.
All this time, the imaginary friend was real. But he wasn't a child, but a terrifying, nearly 6-foot-tall grown man. I had no idea what was going on, but I knew we had to escape from there. I ran to the door to get out of the kitchen. My daughter was standing behind him, but the door slammed in my face. Suddenly, all the stuff in the kitchen started flying at me, hurting me as I tried to force the door open. I pushed as hard as I could until I managed to break it. Amy was standing there, crying. I pulled her into my arms and ran as fast as I could. I reached the exit door, and as I reached for the key and opened the door, something behind us approached. It was like a distortion in the air that was slowly approaching us, breaking everything in its path. I managed to open the exit door and ran with my daughter. We went down the stairs without waiting for the elevator. All the lights behind us were going out. The light bulbs were breaking, and even though there was no one behind us, we heard violent and loud footsteps that were getting closer and closer. We opened the exit door and ran as fast as we could to my car. Behind us, at the apartment doors, I caught my first glimpse of a man standing in the doorway. The man had a terrifying smile and cruel red eyes. The rest of his face was sunk in a black shadow, and from one second to the next, he disappeared. That was the last time I went back to that apartment. I went to my ex-wife's house while she was on vacation and looked for a new place to move to. I hired several people to move everything out of that apartment. I never had an explanation for what was happening, but at least I had the video of what happened in the kitchen to prove that it was real. Unfortunately, no one ever believed me. With so many fake videos on the internet, I can't blame them either. My name is Patricia. I'm 38 years old, and my husband, Connor, and I moved into what we thought would be our dream home, until it took our son. It started about 2 months after we first moved in. My son, Jason, who was diagnosed with nonverbal autism, is only 14 years old. We moved into this town and this home because we were on the verge of losing our previous home. So when we found this deal, we couldn't pass it up. Connor is a traveling salesman and doesn't make a lot. For the first month, everything seemed fine. Jason adjusted to the daily routine in the new house. He grew acquainted with his new room. I homeschool him for the time being, as the new school is going to be harder for him to adjust to. Jason and I were studying literature the other day when the power suddenly went out. Connor was on a business trip, so I had to go downstairs to check the breaker. I heard Jason let out a blood-curdling scream, and I ran upstairs as fast as I could. "Jason!" I called out as I got to the top of the stairs. "Jason!" I rushed into the room, and there Jason sat, reading the pages I told him to read while I checked on the breaker. He looked calm and collective, as though nothing had happened. "Jason?" I said as I went to his side. "Are you all right?" He looked up at me and simply nodded. "Baby, why did you scream?" I asked. He shook his head no with the indication that he didn't scream. I looked all around, and all seemed to be okay. It wasn't unusual for Jason to have random outbursts, but I have never heard him scream like that. The fact, he denied it. Maybe it was just in my head. I managed to fix the breaker, and we continued our lesson. That night, after Jason had fallen asleep, I went downstairs to have a glass of wine and watch some late-night TV to have some time to myself when that blood-curdling scream I heard earlier that day came from Jason's room. I rushed upstairs into Jason's room to find him sleeping soundly. I looked around for anything out of the ordinary, but couldn't find anything out of place. I shrugged it off as lack of sleep and decided to turn in once I finished my glass of wine. 3 days went by without incident, and I began to forget the screams. One night, I finished brushing my teeth and climbed into bed. I fell asleep reading my Bible, and I woke up to Jason hovering over my bed. An unnaturally wide smile spread across his face, and his eyes were wide. "Hello, Mommy," he said. His voice was deep and hissy. I let out a blood-curdling scream of my own and shoved Jason away. He suddenly disappeared into thin air, and I sat up in a cold sweat and panting. Was I dreaming? I got out of bed and went to Jason's room. He was sleeping soundly. I recently started taking medications for my depression. I pulled up my computer and looked up some side effects. I couldn't see hallucinations under any and began to worry. What was going on? The next morning, I called Connor. "Hi, Patty. How are you, my love?" He asked cheerfully through the phone. "Hi, Connor." My voice shook. I need to talk to you about something." "What's the matter? Is everything okay at the house? Do you need me to cut the trip short?" I burst into tears. "I don't know what's wrong with me. For the past week, I've heard Jason screaming at the top of his lungs as though he's seen something frightening, but when I rush to him, he's calm as though nothing happened. I heard it at night and rushed upstairs to check on him. He was sound asleep." "Does those medications you started taking have hallucination side effects?" Connor asked. "I've looked it up and it says that it doesn't cause them," I said. "Well, darling, everyone is different. Maybe get a hold of the doctor and talk to him about it." "Okay, I'll set up an appointment." "Good deal. How is the little rascal anyway?" He's doing well. He loves reading." "Our boy sure is smart." "Yes, he is. I sure love him, and I love you, sugar boo." "I love you, honey boo." I laughed and looked outside the window to see Jason with sidewalk chalk. He was drawing some sort of symbol of witchcraft. "Connor, I have to go," I said. "Everything okay?" Jason's just drawing on the walls again." Connor chuckled. "Okay, talk to you later. Let me know what the doctors say." I set my phone down and rushed outside. "Jason, what are you doing?" I asked frantically. He ignored me as though he was in some sort of trance. "Jason, look at me," I said. Usually, kids with autism don't make eye contact, but Jason at least looks up. He looked at me, and for the first time, his eyes met mine. "Jason doesn't live here anymore," he said. His voice was dark and demonic. He then got on all fours and crawled down to the basement at an unnatural speed. I screamed loudly and ran after him. By the time I got to the basement, Jason was dead. I wasn't imagining this. I rushed upstairs and called Connor. The doctor confirmed I didn't have any hallucinations. We buried our boy, and in our moments of grief, we took the photo albums out of the house and burnt it down. Whoever took our son never followed us.